everyone, my name is Jess Mason, Head of Marketing at IT360, and welcome to another edition of Let's Talk Hacking. We've got a very interesting topic on the table today. We're going to be talking about DDoS. I know it sounds very, very confusing, but I've got my panel experts here today, Dave Wilson, CEO of IT360, and our resident cybersecurity expert, Peter van Zyl. So guys, shall we kick in? What is this DDoS? I know it's distributed denial of service. Yes, that sounds very technical, but can you just maybe expand a bit on what it actually is for those that don't really get the concept or don't hear it that often?
Yeah, thanks, Jess. Yeah, DDoS is, in a fundamental way, taking down a service, some kind of technology. Imagine if I was a retail store, there's a whole lot of technology which goes in the back end. If I'm a customer, I may not notice it, but from an operational perspective, I've got checkout systems and online stores and purchase order systems and stock, all these things that work together to actually provide the business operation. If a DDoS attack was successful, they might take down such systems, leaving customers unable to purchase something, leaving staff unable to count the stock on the shelves, and unable to serve their customers. So DDoS attacks are pretty scary things that can happen. So
okay, I just want to go back a bit though, Dave, when you was explaining this earlier. I know we see a lot of this happening in retail. Could you give us maybe a bit more explanation around that? How could a sector like that be really impacted by something like this?
Something like retail. Mm-hmm. So if you're retail or any other industry and you're not protected from DDoS, you could be in big trouble.
That's right. So there's a lot of different ways for DDoS attacks to happen, a lot of different methods you can use and everything else out there. A common one that happened recently was the NZ Stock Exchange that got hit. That was brought to its knees. It was big. I think it was an outage of like 5 days, not 5 days long, just happened over 5 days or whatever the case is.
But what exactly happened? Because I know that has been all over the news. And for people that don't understand cyber attacks or DDoS as a concept, what actually happened to the NZ Stock Exchange?
So, I mean, to dive into that, I'll need to delve a bit deeper into how DDoS works or what happens. A good analogy that we have is imagining a Black Friday sale where there's a lot of people trying to access a store or mall, or I mean, you even made the comment of everyone sitting in the parking lot, so you're hiring a lot of people just sitting outside the mall waiting to go in and just flooding the traffic, so you as a legitimate shopper can't get in. That's in a nutshell what DDoS is, and the problem is that it's not only specific to this IP is attacking me, so let's block that IP. No, they try and mimic used services. So they'll, for example, see, you've got your FBOSS system on some kind of port or whatever, because you've got remote branches. So they try and mimic that traffic, so taking your FBOSS systems down. So it looks legitimate, but it isn't, and that then basically brings it to its knees. A common way of them achieving it is by using what we call a botnet. So it's basically a network of PCs that got malware installed, and it's just sitting there waiting for someone to push a button. That triggers millions of people to hit a target. So it's me as one person clicking one button, flooding the traffic to a certain location with millions of people in unneeded, unwarranted communication and connection.
Okay. So you use the term malware, and I know we are going to get to that in our upcoming videos, but a very quick, simple explanation on what malware is?
So basically what it is what we used to call it as a virus. So someone gained access to your system, installed a virus, or you downloaded something that you shouldn't have or had malware embedded in it, and that then ended up in your system. So malware's got a lot of different hats it wears. One is specifically including your system as a botnet. So you won't actually do anything, just one day your PC is on, and when someone triggers it, you just start flooding traffic joining the system, and you might not even realize it because it only needs very little data from you to actually do something about it.
Okay. So how do we handle this for our clients? Because I'm pretty certain a lot of our clients have gone through this, have experienced this type of attack. What do we do specifically from a services and solutions perspective that we can recommend for our listeners that is easy to implement, or how do we just talk them through this?
So as with a lot of stuff that we do is we do it in a multi-layered approach. I mean, common firewall. So the firewall will see traffic coming in. It will see, this is a known botnet IP address or range, so it blocks that traffic, so it's unwarranted traffic coming in, just denies it completely, chucks it to the side. The problem is that what I mentioned earlier is it is common for them to try and use legitimate services. So it looks legitimate traffic, not just a random IP address or anything that they hit. So the firewall is one layer of protection. Another layer of protection, if we go higher up the pipe, is from your ISP. So we'll get the traffic pointed somewhere else. So imagine a term we use is honeypotting. So we'll push the traffic to a different cloud provider or someone else to scrub the traffic for us, and then push legitimate traffic back to us. So in a nutshell, imagine the traffic coming in, we see a botnet attack happening, we start pushing the traffic somewhere else, scrubbing the traffic, and only legitimate traffic coming back. So in addition to that, firewall and everything else. So there's a lot we do, but those are probably the two most common things that we do.
Scrubbing the traffic.
Yeah.
Mr. Technical, can you maybe explain that for our listeners?
In a nutshell, it's looking to see if any of that traffic is bad or good. How do we know if it's a DDoS attack? You logging into a website, you're coming from one IP address, logging into sort of one port, and it's very minimal traffic. In a DDoS attack, it all happens at the same time. The flood of traffic, sometimes from the same range, same IP addresses, so it's something that looks similar. So we got a sort of a little image that we can look at. This is the traffic that's not needed. To go through the system is scrubbing it. So we basically working through the data that we have and saying, this percentage is good data, this is actually people needing to access the website, that can go through. This data is because of a botnet, because of whatever, the DDoS is coming from this, so that we chuck it to the side.
Okay. How will someone know if they've been open to a DDoS attack?
Well, everything's down.
Okay. So, it sounds like almost silly because most of us, but yeah, I think it's our listeners sort of want to understand that, right?
True.
We know it at a technical level, but they probably don't.
Yeah.
So guys, this is all well and good, but we help small businesses. That's what IT360 is about, right? So what does this mean for a small business owner? What do they need to do? I mean, these are not big corporates. They don't have money to go and overhaul their IT systems. So how do we come in there? What can we recommend?
Yeah. And I think the reality is, I think a lot of small business owners, maybe if we've not been hit with a security breach before, we we can maybe assume that we're not a target. But unfortunately, a lot of the targets these days are automated, and therefore bots don't really care what the business is. They're just looking for holes, aren't they, or for vulnerabilities.
Get a bit of crypto out of it.
Exactly right. So ultimately, a small business owner needs to be just as aware of anybody else that this could happen to them. And we've actually got a number of examples. We can use one of our customers that was DDoSed recently, and for them, of course, it doesn't look like a virus. It's a very different service. Basically, the internet just sort of comes to a halt, and you start to go, what's the problem? Is it my ISP? Is my internet down? Something's wrong. And you've got the IT team scrambling, potentially everyone around the office is going, what's going on? And if we don't have the right technology or monitoring in place and the right plan in place, we don't know what the problem is, and ultimately the business is suffering for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So yeah, there's a lot of things we could talk about there, but discuss the idea of the right technology in place. So what's a good example of the right technology? So
if we elaborate a bit on that, top of the mind examples is getting multiple IP addresses, multiple ISPs. So if you, for example, what we call blackholing an IP is if an IP address gets hit, we get rid of that IP address, but the problem is that most companies only have one.
Right.
So if we get rid of that IP address, you don't have an IP address. You have no internet. There's nothing. It doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm. So your internet or your IP address is kind of like your pathway to the internet for your stuff.
And from.
And if you have only one, which most people would because that's probably what they've just been told, or they haven't ever had a second thought on this.
Yes.
But as a business, we'd recommend people have 3 or 4 or 5 pathways, and ultimately that doesn't matter until it really matters.
Yes.
And now we've got multiple pathways to get to the internet for our staff rather than just one.
Exactly.
So what's another example?
Well, in terms of technical?
Yeah.
Okay, so, multiple ISPs is a good one. The reason is that still your ISPs can maybe get some kind of service hit on their side. So
True.
You as a company can get DDoSed, but if your ISP gets DDoSed, I mean, how much can you do of that? Someone cuts the line on the end of the road. It's still a good example to have multiple ISPs on site. So your firewall will not only have multiple IPs with the one service provider, but also have a secondary service provider. And there doesn't have to be
and of course, a little sales pitch there. If any business wants a secondary internet connection at the office, we can always do that. Stick with your current ISP, and we'll just take on a second.
Yes.
And it just gives you that protection at a relatively inexpensive cost, right?
Yes,
Per month. It's not exactly expensive to add a secondary internet connection to your site. And for the upside of staying online, having your staff work, your customers serviced, for potentially hours on end down, if this happened to them, it's really the cost benefit is there.
With add-ons to SD-WAN and everything else that secondary connection can even be used as a failover if you have a lot of service on the one area but you're not using the rest of it, it just of course sort of starts using the second one.
Yep. So we talked about the idea of monitoring as well. So what if a business was hit with DDoS but there was no monitoring in place? How
would you know?
How will you know?
Yeah.
Exactly right. So as us as an IT company, talk about your own experience of being able to monitor for something like this.
So, first off, how would you know if, people will probably start phoning up, don't have internet, something's wrong, something's dead, or my customers are phoning, nobody's reaching,
you call
whatever.
it ISP, it's not a problem.
Yeah, if you have a good ISP, good IT company, we'll be able to tell you. We've got, for example, again, firewalls in place, so we'll monitor this. There'll be logs sent to us saying, it's now being hit, there's an obscene amount of traffic. When a customer phones in, there's something weird going on, we can remotely log in, see it. We even have access from inside, not just external access, because otherwise it would be a bit of a fail. We also work with good ISPs, so most of these ISPs will already have things in place on their end. And they'll also know if they're being DDoS. So in the combination of your tech on site, us as an IT company, and our ISPs will be able to work together to get that mitigated and results put in place if you have them.
Okay, so we spoke about technology, monitor, and, what comes after that?
Well, that's it. It's disaster recovery. So
I think obviously COVID's taught us a lot about having a plan, and what happens to business if you don't have a plan. Talk about the idea of DR, or disaster recovery, or BCP, business continuity planning. So it's all good to have the right technology in place, all good to have monitored, but if something did happen, it's just like if there was a fire in the office, then no one knew where the fire evacuation point was. You're all going to scramble. So what's the equivalent of that in the tech world, Pete, where we've had a problem, then we need a procedure. We need to know who's responsible for this. We need to know what happens, what's the plan, and how we're going to recover from it.
So, we would have plans in place, not only who to contact, who to communicate to, who key individuals are, but also either what technology we have or what hardware or software we've got in place to mitigate this. So, examples we've basically used. So, we've got multiple IP addresses, so we jump on that, changing the IP, black holing the other one. You have the cloud service where we're routing your traffic to get scrubbed, so that's another area that we implement, and we just basically have these steps put into place where we would just go, this is what we do, this is what we do, this is what we do, so we mitigate the results and just have them up as ASAP. Because if you don't have that, how long you're down, how long your customer's going to wait.
So, one of the things I'm just trying to summarize this now for the listeners, why does this matter to small businesses? Could you summarize that for us?
So, it's down, you're out, you're losing business. That's probably the hardest one, the reason for all of this. It can be in more detail than you think. So
harder to spot. It's not the same as a virus. It's a different kind of a cybersecurity attack. Which is less talked about probably until the most recent examples of like the NZX and stuff.
Yes, that's exactly it. Funny enough, it is one of the most common, but it's a lot of people don't realize. There's a recent part of the news where actually a lady died, if I'm not mistaken, died because of the ambulance, and they had to reroute the ambulance, and it's...
What, the ambulance was DDoS? Or
No, the hospital was DDoS.
The hospital was DDoS?
Wow.
Yeah.
And that affected the ambulance?
Yes.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Whoa.
So
that's kind of close to home, isn't it?
That's scary.
Yeah, I don't know if it was here in New Zealand, I think it was in US, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow. Okay, so the interesting thing is that regardless of whether you use IT360 or another technology solutions provider, these are the things that, at a most basic level, small business owners need to be watching out for, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Well, there you've got it, guys. Some great tips and some great discussion points around DDoS. Now you know what it is. But if you still have any questions, please drop us your questions and comments on the link before. Failing that, please visit our website, www.it360.co.nz, and you can connect with any of our technical experts, whether it's Peter. We've got a great team, and we are more than willing to come through and assist you. We hope you've gained a lot of good insights from today. If not, just drop us a line, and we will definitely be answering your questions in our forthcoming videos. Thank you once again for joining us on Let's Talk Hacking.
Thanks.
Cool.